Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Turtle, as I go by in the community. I will be starting today a little tutorial series on modeling with 3ds, how to do tips and tricks, etc. I have a lot of different people asking me all the time, hey, how can I do this? Hey, how do I make this? Hey, can you show me how to do this? And for the most part, I normally don't answer any of those questions because I tend to be extremely difficult to understand when I'm trying to explain things, especially if it's over a message. Say you message me on Discord, whatever it may be. So I figure, well, let me start up a little tutorial series here and show you guys how to do those things, how to model and all that good stuff. Today I'll be doing an introduction to the interface for anyone that is completely new. You've just downloaded 3ds Max. If you already know how to model with 3ds, if you already know how to do whatever, the basics, skip this video. You don't have to watch this video. But this is going to be the first video of the series for anyone that is new and has completely no idea how to use 3ds Max. So let's get started. So when you first launch 3ds Max, you're going to be greeted with this screen here that we're looking at. I'm just going to give you a couple of different options. Now, you won't have your recent files list here because you don't have any files. Of course, if you have been using 3ds Max and you've made some things, then you will have this tab. But most of you will not. If this is your first time ever using 3ds Max, it will more than likely be blank. I don't quite remember, but it should be blank. And on the right hand side here, you'll have these 5 templates here to choose from. Now, for anyone that's going to be doing any sort of rendering, or they want to make any sort of, say, game type stuff, so you want to make a map in a game, whatever it may be, to do any high quality rendering in places, if you're making a vehicle and you want to render it on a road, so on and so forth, you're going to use all these 4 options here. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't know how to use any of this stuff, so going deeper into that, I have no idea. But more than likely, you'll just come in here and you want a 3D model. You're going to choose this first option here, so you're going to double click on it, and it's going to open up. It'll go blank for a second, and you're going to open up to this. Now, all of this might look kind of scary at first. There's a lot of different buttons here to choose from, play with, etc. But to start off with, I'm going to go over this top row here. So first off, you have your undo button, you have your redo button, you have select and link, unlink selection, and bind to space warp. Now, I've never used these 3 buttons, honestly. A lot of this stuff you will never use when you 3D model, but just to go over it so everyone kind of understands where everything's at and what all these buttons are, and I'm going to go over everything. If I don't know how to use it, then of course I'm going to tell you I don't know how to use it. And following, you have a selection filter, which I've never used again, select object, and select by name. Now, select object you're going to use a lot when you're selecting things. Let's just say you have multiple objects in your scene here, which is what that's called, as a scene, and you want to select something, but say you have your move tool on. If you go to grab something and select it, and you have that object that you have in the scene, you're going to end up moving that box or whatever it may be over. So when you're trying to select things, or select multiple things, or select something that's on top of an object, you're going to want to click here on select object. That's going to stop you from moving, rotating, etc. And next one here is going to be your rectangular selection region. Now this you can change. I believe there's a couple different options here. I do forget how to change it, but you're going to want to really leave this as it is. There's not really much of a need to change it. It's really just your selection. It changes, I believe it's a square, an ellipse, or a circle, and maybe one other option, but you'll never really want to change any of that. Window crossing, again, one of the tools that I've never used. The most used tools in this window, this box here, is going to be your select and move tool, your select and rotate tool, your select and uniform scale, which again, it's a scale button. make it really simple, it's just to scale things. And then your angle snap. Those are the 4 buttons that I use the most. A lot of this other stuff you'll never use. You also have a mirror button right here. It mirrors it over. Say you have an object over here on one side and you need 2 and you want to mirror it. You mirror it over, it flips it to the other side of this black line or whatever axis that you're working with. So continue on, you have select in place. You have this box here. I don't know what this box does. I'm not going to touch that box. You have use pivot point center. Again, one of the things I've never used, never touched. Select and manipulate. This I've never used. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe it displays a box that is orange and it has little points on a box that you can use it, and it will kind of move your object all in one instead of you having to modify that in vertex select, which I'll go over later. I believe that's how that works. If I'm mistaken, someone correct me that does know how to use 3ds Max. But yeah, for the most part, I've never used this. Keyboard shortcut override toggle, never touched it, so don't know again. Snaps toggle. What a snaps toggle does, I'll go over this right quick, is, let me make a box really quick. What this does, it gives you these little cursor points here on your grid. So with this, what you can do, if you want to make, say, a perfect square, you can click and drag when you're making, say, a box, and it will keep it all scale. And if you look down here in your perspective view here, it brings it up as well evenly. So if you want to make a perfect cube, boom, there you're done. When you're done doing your height, you just click and it stops it, and there you go. So basically what that will do too is it'll allow you to move an object. Now, mind you, it can be kind of finicky. For me at least, it has been a good bit. But you can grab, say, an object on the corner, move it box to box if you want to keep it uniform, and so on and so forth. Personally, I don't normally use it. A lot of times I tend to eyeball a lot of things. So it can vary according to what you're doing, according to how you're modeling, how you like to model. We all, as you use 3ds, you'll kind of grow into your own way that you like to go about doing things. For me, I tend to do things the hard way, as I've noticed. There's a lot of other people that, of course, 3D model, and judging by how I tend to do things and how they tend to do things, I do things the hard way. But for me, I will normally do things in what makes the most sense to me, logically. So forgive me if some of you that do 3D model are looking at this and you're like, what the hell is he doing? But that's just how I work. That's the way I do things. Now continue on. So that's basically all that this snaps toggle does. It just snaps it point to point on the grid here. I very rarely use it, and if I do, it's going to be for something, of course, that's honestly using boxes. I've never really used it a whole lot, and if I need to move anything, I will normally eyeball it. Now the next tool is going to be your angle snap toggle. And when you do tick these, if you just noticed up here, all of these will stay on. They don't, say if you click snaps toggle and you want to do angle snap, snaps toggle will stay on. So if you don't want snaps toggle on, you want to tick that off. Now, I don't ever use 2 of them at the same time, because the couple times that I've used them, it is, best way to put it is, it's kind of screwed up what I was doing. It will throw things around for me, at least, and it doesn't give me a good result of how I want to do things. So I never use 2 of these in conjunction with each other. But this next tool is your angle snap toggle. This I use a lot for rotating things. And the basic parameter that this is set to is a 5% snap. So you'll see it right here, in this area. As you move it, it ticks up 5. Same thing, it'll tick down 5, negative rotation, positive rotation, etc. I use this a lot when modeling, especially if I want something um, to be uniform with another piece. I don't want to say rotate something with this ticked off, say, and just rotate it blindly, and then make another object and then try and rotate it that same way, because then the end result will be one side of it's going to look a little more slightly out or in than the other side. So I normally like to keep things uniform, use the angle snap, and kind of toggle it just like so, and it will snap. And then of course, if you go too far over, oops, I wanted to do 55% instead of 60, you just take it, bump it up 1, you fixed it. And then when you right click on the box here, you can change how it works. And the only thing I've ever really changed with it is your angle snap degree. You can change it as low as 0.5, I believe. Yeah, you can do it as low as like 0.5, 0.1 if you want. The lowest I've ever taken it is 1 degree, but for the most part, you're going to want to work with 5 in your angle degrees. The percentages, snap radius, all that good stuff, I've never touched, I've never used, but it may be kind of straightforward and simple of how they work. Snap radius 20 pixels, whatever. But I've never touched any of that. I've only ever used angle, and that's how that works. I normally leave it at 5, but if there's something that I'm making that has a very, say I'm using the snap toggle and I rotate it and it doesn't match, then either I'll just get rid of the snap toggle and do it myself and eyeball it, or I'll go into these settings here and I will change the angle degree that it snaps to, say 1 or 2 or whatever it may be. That's how you use that. Now, percent snap toggle, I have never used, and I believe the way it works is when you're scaling, it scales at a certain percentage, but something I can't speak on. I've never used it, but it gives you the same thing here. They all use this same settings box. Your snap preview radius and snap radius is this one here. Your angle is this one, and your percent is this one. But again, I've never played with any of those other ones, so I'm not quite sure. I've never used the percentage, but I'm pretty sure it works off of your scale. Whenever you scale an object, it'll scale at a certain percentage if you have that ticked on, which honestly I could probably use, but I just never have. It's never been one of those things that I've used. I've just kind of always eyeballed things. So I'm continuing on from that. Spinner snap toggle, no idea what this does. I'm not even going to touch it. I've never used it, never had to use it, don't know what it does. So, simple as that. Now, moving on, the next thing you have here. This box here, I don't know what this one does either. I've never used it, never touched it, not going to touch it. But the next box after this is your mirror tool. What your mirror tool does is when you click on it, it brings up this little box here. Now, according to which direction you need to mirror something is how you're going to use your little mirror axis box here. So I've never had to do it this way, but in the case that you do, say if you have something that you've modeled, say on this top axis here, when you click X, it brings it up. Say you want to push it to the bottom, it's going to push it down to the bottom. Now this is a simple move. Honestly, this is just a simple move. You take it and you move it. It moves it over this box here, and you can't click anywhere when doing this because it gives you that little ding. You have to select your commands first before you can go back and move around in your scene. For me, the only time I've had to use this is when I want to make a copy of something and say I want to mirror it over, say, okay, the z-axis works here. So it just mirrors it to the bottom. Or you can do, say, X, Y, Y, Z, Z, X. Now this being a box, it's not exactly working the way you need it to work, mainly because your pivot, which is this your little pivot gizmo, this thingy here, is in the middle of the box. But if you had it, say, in the middle of the scene here, it would then flip over to the x-axis when you tick the X. But since it's in the middle, it's not going to flip it over that one. And that's something that you're going to have to do. I'll show you later on. But so I don't confuse anyone, I'm going to leave that alone for right now and go back to it later. Now, align, I believe this setting is in the edit poly settings. If I'm pretty sure all it does, well, actually I have no idea what it does. Yeah, no idea. So we're gonna skip that. All this stuff here, I never touch. This right here is your material editor. I very rarely have to use this, but when you click it, it brings up this box here, and this will allow you to set up materials in your scene. The only time I have ever had to use this is when I want to bring in a picture of something I'm trying to make, and I need to use it as like a basis of how to model the object. Say it's a side view of a car, which is how most people will model cars, is they'll bring in like a side picture of it or a side vector graphic, and they'll put it on here. They'll lay it down on a plane in the scene, and they will work from there. But I normally don't really touch this, but if you ever had to use it, uh, ask somebody else how to use it, because I don't texture anything in 3ds. I don't set up any sort of materials, templates, etc. in 3ds. I do all of that in ZModeler, just because I know how to do it, I know how to use it, and there's no use in me doing extra work in 3ds that I will only have to do in ZMod. There's no use in taking up more time than what needs to be taken up. So I normally don't ever touch this unless I need a template for something or whatever to work off of on how to make something if I'm trying to get it exactly right. And there's like 100 million different options in here, and half of them I don't know how to do, and I'd start clicking shit and get everyone confused, including myself. So I'm not going to touch the material editor today. And this is all your rendering stuff. I don't do any rendering in 3ds. I don't know how, never have, probably never will. So again, don't know how to use it, not going to touch it. Now, coming over here to this little box here, this is where you're going to do a lot of your, say, editing your settings. Like you can edit the length of your object you're working with, if it is still in its basic parameters. So, say you want to edit the length to 100. There you go. You've made your box 100. I think it works off of meters, if I'm not mistaken, 100 meters long or 100 feet, whatever. I don't know what it uses, but there you go. Or you want to edit the width to 152. Boom, there you go. Change the width on the x-axis. And you want to edit the height. It's going to edit the height on the z-axis. Say you want to make it 5,000. You know, boom, there you go. You got this big ass tall fucking box. And the only time you can use this little thing here is when you still have it in your box modifier. Just your very simple basic thing. One thing I forgot right quick is the setting the length segments. Basically what this does, if you tick up any of these, is it's going to give you extra polys to work with. It's going to cut, basically, it's going to cut your object piece by piece, and in your perspective view, you can't see it. In your top, front, and left, if you zoom out, and you zoom out, of course, using the mouse wheel, and you pan over using your middle mouse button, you click it in, and it pans it back and forth, up and down, whatever. And you also rotate with your Alt button and the mouse wheel button. So you want to click your mouse wheel button, Alt, mouse wheel, and it lets you rotate. You can do this in any scene as well. And you can rotate it in here. I personally like to work off of an orthographic viewport, and I normally work off of just one. And to make this bigger, which is what I normally do, you press Alt and W, and it expands it upwards. And I normally will always work off of one viewport here. I normally don't work off of two. Me personally, it gets confusing. I'm looking at four different windows here with an object, and it confuses me. So I normally work with just one. But for the sake of the video, for anyone that's new, I'm not going to get that complicated. So we're just going to work with all four today. Now, back to what I was saying about the perspective thing. And what I just did here, you press Z and it will reset your camera or your view back to the object you have selected. So say if you're all the way out here and you've been rotating and stuff and you're trying to zoom in and it gets really slow, just press Z, it'll reset it back to the object. But to be able to view these lines that you see here and here, in your perspective, you're going to press F4. F4 gives you edged faces. Edged faces, of course, edged faces, it's what you've done over here in your length, width, and height segments section. I normally will never touch this. I normally will do this stuff myself. I will start up with a box or a plane or whatever for what I'm making. Have these all set to 1, so you literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you have 6 faces in total on the object, and you can fine tune it later using some of the other modifiers that you have. But that is your basic parameters section on your box. Now, the next tab over here, this is the modified tab is what this is. This is the first one you're greeted with when you open up 3ds. This is just the standard that it puts you in when you make an object. On your left, you have your create. When you first open up 3ds, the first tab you see here is your create. And when you make an object, it then pushes you over to your modified tab. My mistake. But you'll first be greeted with your create tab. And you have a lot of different things here that you can use. And to be honest with you, I've never used anything over here. I believe I've used shapes a handful of times, and that's when you need to make, like, say, a headlight wrap for a push bar, or you've got to make a line or an arc or something, or a donut, a damn donut. You know, you got to make a donut for something. But you know, I normally don't touch it. I normally stick with just your standard objects, and I will, of course, work things the hard way, and if I need to make a line or an arc, or I need to make a headlight wrap, I do it myself. It takes a lot more time, but for me, it's just one of those things that I like doing on my own. Mind you, some people will want to make that, and this is not, quote unquote, the easy route, but for me, it's just one of those things that I like doing myself, and you can make a line or something or a circle or whatever it might be, and there's other little parameters and stuff you can edit in there and make what you're trying to make. But for me, I do things the hard way. That's just me, and I'll go more deeper into that in a separate video when I show you how to 3D model and how to do certain things. But for now, we're just going to stick with the interfaces and how they work, what they do. So in your first tab here, which is your geometry tab, you're greeted with an object type tab, and any of these little boxes here with if it has a little minus in it, you can tick it. There we go. You can tick it and it'll drop it down, and you tick the plus that it makes and it will bring it back up. You've got the first thing you've got here is box, cone, sphere, geosphere, cylinder, tube, torus, pyramid, teapot, and plane. Teapot, well, self-explanatory, it's a damn teapot. You know, hey, let's have some fucking tea. But it gives you a teapot, it gives you a top. It's already pre-made shape, you know, very simple, very basic, and you can play with it some, and you can change what you have in it too, like your body is that, your handle is that, your spout, of course, and your lid. Just a very basic object that 3ds gives you to play with. You kind of edit, you have your radius that you pull it up and down, make it however big you want, and segments will define how smooth it is. And you can bring this up as high as you want as long as your graphics card and or processor can handle it. And the higher poly you go in a scene is the more demanding it will get on your computer. For GTA, which is what most of you will be modeling for unless you branch off into other games, you'll normally stick with a lower poly object. Now, anyone that likes to model for, say, um, like they like to render, or they like to do things for Unity or whatever the software is called. Like, for example, Bullseye. If no one knows who Bullseye is, you'll know who he is later on. He does things for GTA, and he also does things outside of GTA, and he likes to model things higher poly because that's what they demand. So for, say, someone that does something like that, you'll want to use a higher poly object because that's what's in demand. But when it comes to GTA, you want to have a lower poly object. You want to keep things in a low poly range. And a lot of the times, this type of detail isn't needed, which you'll grow to understand as you model. Say a 20 segment teapot. This is just going to be our example for today. 20 segment teapot. It is extremely smooth. It's smooth. It looks good. When you tap out of F4, it looks really smooth. This, and I can't stress it enough, this is not ideal for GTA. This looks fantastic when you render. This looks fantastic when you put it into any sort of game engine and stuff and you just want it for looks. Unfortunately, this is not what you want when you're trying to make something for GTA especially. This high poly object is just not needed. It looks great. Okay, don't get me wrong, it looks great, it's smooth, whatever. But that's not what you want for the game. You'll want something, and see, as I'm ticking this button down, there is really no noticeable difference in the quality until you get really low. Oh shit, I'm going up, my bad. And see, it's very subtle. Now see, about here is when it starts to kind of take shape, kind of change the shape of it. But after, say, segment 6, it's just very tiny details that you can see. Like, you can kind of see it going up on the little spout here. So I can't stress it enough that that amount of detail is not needed for the game, period. So if you wanted to have a damn teapot in Grand Theft Auto, you wanted to replace, say, a coffee pot with a damn teapot or whatever, then you'd bring it down, and that being an object that you can't even use in the game, it'd be fairly low poly. Now you can fix little things like this, this little pinch, this little pinch it has here. You can fix little things like that. That's easy. But for the most part, you want to aim to have a low poly object, and you don't want it to be too low. Okay, but you want it to be low enough that the game can handle it, and it still looks good, So you're not going to, for example, if, of course, making this teapot, you're not going to be looking at this close, looking at all this detail. You're going to be looking at it from, say, this far away. Now, this is, of course, laying flat down on the thing, so it's kind of hard to maneuver in this scene here. But you're going to be looking at it kind of like this. And when you tap out of, if it'll, damn it, go away. Oh, there we go. Tap out of that and press G, and that gets rid of your grid here. Looking at it from this distance, it looks alright, It's a damn teapot. You know what it is, you know what it is, you know what it looks like. Simple. Up close, yes, they kind of look a little shitty, I'm not gonna lie, but that's just the way the game handles things. That's what you have to do for this. And two, you have another, wait a minute. Oh, I think it changed some because I tapped the lid on. But anyway, enough of the teapot though. But again, I can't stress it enough. Low poly is king in this game. Do not make something that is 30,000 polys and throw it in that fucking game. Excuse my language. But please, Do not make something extremely high poly and put it in GTA. Please don't. Please don't. I can't stress that enough. Now, moving on. We're going to get rid of this teapot, so you're going to press the delete key. Um, and how I actually got out of this little tab here when I was working with this is you just right click and it takes you out, of whatever you're working with. If it's a cylinder, you don't want it anymore, you right click. A sphere, right click. A box, right click. It doesn't matter what viewport you're in, any of that. Um, wow, this video has been going for 30 minutes. Huh. This is a lot longer than I thought it would be. Anyway, but a lot of that is your basics. Back to the create tab here, you have all this stuff. In your standard primitives, you have extended primitives, compound objects, particle systems, patch grids, AEC extended doors, body objects, stairs, mental ray, windows, NURBS surfaces, dynamics objects, point cloud objects, and however the hell you say that, alembic something. I don't fucking know. Looks like French. Um, you normally won't ever use anything past compound. I've never touched any of this stuff. I've only ever used standard, extended, which gives you a little bit of extra stuff here to work with, and compound. And compound kind of gets a little more into detail. The only thing I've really ever used out of this is boolean, which you'll use a lot when you want to cut holes into objects, but that's for a separate video. But continuing on, you have shapes here. I've already went over shapes, I think, and it kind of, whole thing with that, it gives you a bunch of different shapes to work with. Past this, I've never used. And back to your modifier list here. So still working with this box. This is your modified tab. In your modifier list, you have a ton of things you can work with, and this is where it gets confusing for anyone that's new. And I'm going to be honest, the only buttons I have ever had to use when modeling is edit poly. Edit poly is almost going to be the standard that you put on from a modifier to an object, because this is going to allow you to edit the object. Now when you click on that, you're greeted with the ability to use this modeling tab here, and it gives you all these different options. But for the basics and the basic overview of it, when you click on the edit poly tab, it gives you selection like vertex, edge, border, polygon, and element. What all of these do, you click on vertex, it greets you with these little points. I'm going to work off of the orthographic view here since it's see-through. You press F3 as well to make it to actually see what color or whatever, what texture you have on it. F3 kind of gives you a see-through of it. This basically gives you these little pinch points here that you can use to edit your object, whatever it may be, or you want to grab, say, 3 of these together, boom, there you go. Basic, simple stuff. It's very useful when modeling. But don't pull a vertex out way too much, because then you have normals issues and you make things look weird, or if you pull it through, then you have issues like this where it just looks weird. You've got to make sure when you edit with vertices you make it uniform. So if you're going to use that, then you're going to want to pull all of them at once, or maybe even the tops at once, to kind of keep it all uniform and still looks good. But continuing on from there, the next one you have is edge select. And what edge does is allows you to grab the edges of objects. So you've got your edges here, you can click. You can grab them all at once and move them as well. Any of this stuff you can move freely as you wish. You can move this stuff around, do whatever with. Personally, I don't ever move anything using edge select. Very rarely have I ever had to. For the most part, you'll use vertex select to do that. But you can do that in edge select. You can do the same thing you did with the vertices, grabbing the top two and moving something like that. Or say grabbing the back here and moving it. Or even if you want, of course, keeping everything uniform. If you did want to slant an object like that, you just grab that on your X. You click on your X there and move it back and forth, etc. Very simple, very easy. And also up top, I've been using this a lot and haven't mentioned it. This is, again, this is an undo button as well, and you can use this one here, or you can use this one. I personally have always just went up to the top and used this one. I don't know why, that's just my preference. This also allows you to make a new scene, open a file, save your file, undo, redo, and project folder, which opens up where you have all your stuff saved, I believe. Never used it, never really touched it, but I believe that's how that one works. But continuing on here, next you have border selection. Now what border selection does is it grabs a border if you have an open, if your object is open. And what I mean by that is, say you don't have this part right here. And to show you what I mean, you go into polygon mode and you click on it and it grabs this piece here and you press delete. Now your object is what I say is open. Now I might not have the right terminology. I am by no means a professional modeler. Um, and most of the stuff that I've done is self-taught. So keep in mind, I don't know the right terminology for a lot of things, but in my sense, it's the object is open. You know, you can see inside of it. Now, you would not see this. You would be able to see straight through it because it doesn't have the only real uh, what's the word for it? Basically, it doesn't have an inside to it. This, if you pulled an object like this straight into game, you would see straight through if you looked at it through here, because it doesn't have an inside. I don't know how else to explain that, but in another editing modeling video, I'll explain that a little bit more. But the way your border select works is when you have an object that's in this current state, you can click on any of the 4 edges or 6 or 12, however many edges it has, and it will grab that border. And then if you go into edge select right after that, edge select will keep it selected, and then you can have a little bit more that you can choose from to edit it with, and so on and so forth. You can move it, you know, you can scale it if you want to use a scale button up here. You can scale it on, say, your Z and Y, and it keeps it kind of uniform, or you can do it on all 3 axes, or you can do it just on your X. Actually, you can't do it on your X. That's if you have vertices selected. Do it on your Z, etc. We're going to pull that back down. All right. And next, of course, you have your polygon select, which is simple. It grabs your polys, so on and so forth. And next, you have element. And when you click on element, it selects the whole entire object. It doesn't matter if it's open or not. And a way to close an object like this in is you press the cap button. Caps it in, makes it all uniform. You know, boom, grabs the whole thing. You can make it bigger, smaller, whatever in this view, or you can do it in polygon mode. If you grab all the polys, do the same thing. You can do this in vertex mode, same thing. It all works the same, really. But those are your basics. Now you have a lot more stuff like hierarchy, motion, display, and utilities. This gets into the more advanced things, and this video is almost 40 minutes as it is. So I'm going to stop there for right now, and I'll go over this other stuff in a separate video. But that's going to be the first episode of the series, and I hope this helped you guys. Hope you all enjoyed, and thank you for watching.